Welcome to CabCast, where we delve into the latest trends, research, and innovations in agriculture. Whether you're a seasoned farmer, an aspiring agriculturalist, or simply interested in the world of ag, this podcast is your go-to source for valuable insights and advice on the go. Today, we have Kemper Sutton, entomologist, Doug Higgins, plant pathologist, Vijay Singh, weed scientist, and your extension agent hosts, Helen Dowdy and Teresa Pittman. So guys, today is our first podcast day. Very exciting-ish. We kind of don't know what we're doing, but hey, it'll be fun trying to figure it out.
Sure.
Helen, you're so worried. But in any case, it is a really beautiful day outside. And I know the point of our podcast, or at least we're thinking, is that this will be a good time for us to kind of discuss all the things going on the farm, outside, at the research station, on the Eastern Shore, maybe even a little bit across the state, depending on what we've seen or heard or any questions that have come in. But it'll be a good time for farmers, clients, Eastern Shore agricultural specialists to listen in and, see what we're talking about here. So I guess first things first is we've introduced ourselves, and so we can go ahead, I guess, and talk about what we've seen outside. It's a really nice day. Helen, what'd you see today?
Lots of blooming potatoes, some field corn that's probably at anywhere V3 to V7 stage. We've had a lot of soybean planting in Northampton County, and it's emerging, not quite emerged, probably coddling to V1. All of our tomatoes have been planted. Some sweet corn is starting to be planted. The cotton is a little bit slower. We're probably at 50% planting right now. And then we have some snap beans as well. And then wheat is past flowering.
Yeah, it's a lot going on.
Lots going on.
It's a lot going on. A lot of vegetables, a lot of row crops. I like it. But specifically, let's talk about a little bit. So you said we've got some flowering wheat. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
So this week, I don't think I had anybody come in this week asking any questions. And I know we briefly talked about cold tolerance. It's been a little bit of a cool winter. And so the thing I noticed about the wheat was it's kind of rather short. And I don't know that there's really anything to be said about it, except that maybe it was just a fluke or whatever. But, this year I'm not riding around. Usually I ride around and I'm like, wow, that's good looking wheat, But this year I'm not really wowed by anything. What do you think, Kemp?
I mean, I think a lot of the wheat looks really good, and I'm sure some folks are switching cultivars. It was a cold winter too. So, plant height isn't necessarily a determinant of
right.
How good it's doing. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
I know that's a thing.
Yeah, I was going to say from my perspective, most of the wheat is done flowering. So we're kind of out of the zone for managing any diseases. All our fusarium head blight fungicides should have gone on around the time of flowering. So it's not useful or effective to put on any fungicides at this point of the stage. We have seen the whole slew of diseases in wheat up to this point. So we saw common rust, we saw stripe rust, we saw stagnospora and septoria, spots on leaves. We've seen powdery mildew, and a lot of our fusarium scab sprays will cover some of those diseases as well. So if they went on at flowering, you should get some additional control out of those sprays. But at this point, really, we're waiting and see, how the crop kind of finishes off, and hoping we don't get rains as we start to mature into the heads start to dry down.
I was going to say I did see the airplane flying over some wheat. I guess maybe last week sometime, or maybe early last week, which is slightly surprising. But hey, there must have been some sort of something in there that they were trying to catch.
Yeah, it could be like some late planted varieties or late maturing varieties that were also planted late. So if anything's left in flowering, but after that flowering's done, there's really not justification to put fungicides on.
The crop duster was going a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago. Yeah, that would make sense because the window is so tight. Like early flowering, the flowers just poke up, and then in less than 7 days after that, we're moved through flowering. So it's really a tight time window to get those sprays out there.
It was fun to watch them, though.
Yeah.
I always like to watch them.
Yeah. And then this time last year, we had barley yellow dwarf virus being reported a lot. But we've only had one case on the shore, and I have not been hearing the uptick like we heard last year in the number of cases around Virginia.
Good.
So if you are seeing barley yellow dwarf symptoms, which would be small spots of stunted plants in your field, that'd be a good opportunity to get in touch with your local extension agent, and we can do it. There's an easy test to do to diagnose that problem. So,
Very good.
Yep.
Very
I
good.
have seen some wheat fields that have impressive Italian ryegrass
Pressure.
Oh my God. Yeah. So
VJ, what do you think about that?
yeah.
This is not the time for any herbicide applications, though. Wheat is towards maturity, but we are observing that, and Italian ryegrass infestation is quite serious in wheat in many fields, and we are also observing this issue in corn and soybean also in some of those fields. So for wheat, there are few options actually. When I talk with growers, what are those problematic scenarios and why we are seeing that kind of infestation? We observed that some of those growers actually missed to apply pre-emergence herbicide, and they completely relied on the post-emergence. Also, I would like to add here the post-emergence herbicide they are using, which are very widespread and kind of very common. Most of our Italian ryegrass are resistant to those herbicides. So we call it like group 2 herbicides, which growers usually use in their fields. So that's why they are not able to control it. So I would suggest growers, if they suspect cases of resistance in their field, rely more on pre-emergence herbicides. They can actually control it quite significantly. And there are I would say quite good herbicides available at the pre-emergence stages. Growers can use Prol. They can use Anthemflex. Anthemflex is excellent herbicide to control Italian ryegrass. It can be used as a pre-plant also, and can be used as a pre-emergence herbicide as well. When you go to post-emergence stage, then there are herbicides Excel and the Excel Bold. I would suggest the Excel Bold. It's more effective on Italian ryegrass. So if you look at the program, herbicide program of pre-emergence and post-emergence, then I would say go with the Anthemflex or Zidwa as a pre, and then use Excel Bold as a post-emergence herbicides, or Osprey if you are not able to kill with the Excel Bold. We also suggest growers to go for tank mixes just to make sure you have other options to control, especially when along with the Italian ryegrass, if you have other weeds too growing, like the broadleaf weeds. So what herbicide options or you can use, or can you mix or use it as a tank mixture option? Then there are herbicides like Harmony Extra or Husky, which you can mix with some of these herbicides, which I just indicated for Italian ryegrass, for controlling wide spectrum of those weeds.
Right.
So I think this problem would require some thought process for the next season and a proper planning.
So this would be good to put, write all this stuff in the stock for next year. Have it all out there, ready to go, pre-emergent wise, early.
Yeah,
that might be a good one.
For Italian ryegrass, our extension article is coming out this month.
Okay.
Which would describe all of these herbicides, their rates for pre and post-emergence applications.
Very good.
And in the next few months, we would be actually delivering one more article, which would focus more on resistance scenarios. If weeds, Italian ryegrass is resistant to some of these, then what are the other options which growers can consider?
So we'll have a publication ready to mail out or to share with people.
Exactly.
That'd be excellent.
Yeah. Within a week or so, it would be out.
But the take home message, I guess, is apply your herbicide
pre-emergence herbicide. Yeah,
and
don't skip
post-emergence,
pre-emergence herbicide, especially when you are seeing that kind of a problem in the
Right.
field.
When you got that.
And also a request to growers, if they are not confirmed about whether it's a herbicide issue or not, send sample to us. We prefer seed samples because that would provide us more flexibility to grow in different conditions. But if you have live samples like plant samples also, that would be still okay. We can grow in or maintain in our greenhouses to evaluate.
Oh, very good. Okay, good. Well, since we're on the subject of weeds, and I know this is probably a little bit later, let's talk a little bit about cover and termination. As riding around, you're seeing corn going in the ground, you're seeing soybeans go in. And from what I'm seeing, most all of it on the Eastern Shore has been terminated already. There's a tiny little bit, but you got to factor in some guys who've got a lot of land and it takes a little while to get over.
Yeah, I think for corn planting, yes, cover crops are already terminated before, but for soybean and cotton, maybe possible in few pockets, growers are still considering terminating and they might have terminated. But what they need to consider is whether they are using glyphosate-based termination approach or the paraquat or Gramaxon based termination approach. For Gramaxon or paraquat, it usually takes 4 to 6 days to completely terminate your crop. But for glyphosate, they have to wait 10 to 12 days. So
10
it's
to 12.
so they should to factor in that time period if they are planning to plant soybean or cotton.
Terminate whichever one.
Exactly. And for corn though, I observed, and we actually received a few questions a week or 2 weeks back. Few growers actually, they missed to apply pre-emergence herbicide because of the rain events. And now they're worried whether they would be able to use dual magnum, which is very common pre-emergence herbicide. Can they use it at the time of emergence of corn? Because they missed it at the pre-emergence stage or just after planting. So it's safe to use dual magnum. That would not be a problem. It would not injure the corn or the emerging corn. The problem is that it would not be able to kill the weeds which are already emerged or germinated, because when you planted corn, the weed would also start the same time, germinating underneath your soil layers. So dual magnum would not provide excellent weed control if you skip that stage. So I would better suggest you wait until V3, V4 stage, like 3-color stage of corn, and then use some strong herbicides, which would provide residual control as well, along with the post-emergence or the burners, we call it. So I would suggest include atrazine at that stage so that they would provide a good, excellent weed control.
Weed control. Kemper, we were talking corn earlier, and did you have did you see anything out and about quite yet? I know that Helen's put out some traps early, but you never really know with the flight patterns and stuff. What did you see as far as corn wise?
So we have been driving around up in the northern part of the shore. Everything's actually looking pretty good. And, I don't know if you guys have heard any reports of pests, but certainly here in the station, we're not experiencing anything. We're looking at a couple trials on white grubs and wireworms in particular, but haven't heard really any reports. Currently, we have this corn earworm trapping network that I'm working with Dr. Tim Bryant from Suffolk on. It's a statewide initiative to kind of look at the moth migration coming up from Florida. Yes. And as you guys know, corn earworms don't overwinter in our state. Right. At least not very successfully because it gets too cold. And so we first started picking up a few moths here on station maybe 2 weeks ago. But as it pertains to our field corn guys, we have this VIP gene. We don't really receive a lot of pressure in field corn. So they're certainly around and will be coming, much more abundant as the season goes on. But, as of right now, those moths are looking for fruiting vegetables, exactly. And we don't have a lot of those right now.
Not yet. Now, Helen, you've got some traps out
Right. I put them out last Thursday.
And you and I are both part of the corn earworm monitoring network. And so we'll be uploading our numbers to that spreadsheet that's going to be kept for the state, which will be kind of nice to see. I always like to say, you watch the migration from as Helen's numbers increase, then mine start to increase as well. So
right.
I haven't put my traps out yet, but I will in the next week or so. And it's more special, and I'll do it very quickly once Helen tells me she starts finding something, but we're still early in the season.
Yeah. I mean, I have had a trap for probably 3 to 4 weeks. This was for another project, and I've caught, a couple corny worms here and there.
Yeah.
But they really don't start catching them until, maybe in a couple weeks or so.
But I did hear about...
Yeah, I mean, every year is different. Of course.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But switching gears a little bit, I did hear about potato beetle in potatoes. And usually, and I guess in years previous, they're always an issue, but I feel like this is a little early. I'm not sure.
I mean, I think we're in the ballpark for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we have one generation per year. So those adult beetles are coming out of the woods and getting on those potatoes. And so all the larvae you see on that plant are really the only ones you're going to see. They don't lay, that one female is only going to lay her eggs one time.
Yeah.
And so, weather is a depending factor, but I mean, I planted early here. I would say, sometime like late March, maybe early April. And we, have had significant beetle pressure here on station. And we have seen some on farm. I don't know. I haven't been out with you guys the past few weeks, but they're certainly around and can be a serious problem if you aren't. I mean, if you miss that window to spray by just a day or two,
they can really decimate.
Yeah, it can really decimate them. Absolutely.
Doug, how about you and disease monitoring, since we're on potatoes?
Yeah. So this is around the time when I typically get a lot of soft rot samples into the diagnostic clinic. I did see the first set of soft rot when we're up checking the weather station up the road on the tuber piece. I haven't seen any black leg, which is when the soft rot has extended from the tuber piece up the stem, or fully wilted plants yet. But I suspect it's going to start coming as we start to warm up here and get these rains and with the warm weather. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do in the field when we have a soft rot outbreak. And so that's kind of one where, it's just making sure it's not something else going on. Because the other trick with soft rot is that it tends to also like to jump in when there's damage caused by something else. So we had a case last year where at first glance it appeared to be soft rot, but it was pink rot, the underlying symptom, when we actually found some plants that weren't totally rotted. And so this is a scenario where it's more likely that pink rot came in first and then soft rot jumped on board. So it can mask. The story with soft rot is that it can be a diagnostic puzzle. It can mask what might be going on there, or it could be the primary issue. We're working with funds from the potato board to bring on some more diagnostic tools to the lab. Good. So if you have samples, you can bring them in.
Good.
Or get them to us. We'd like to put them through the ringer as we kind of get that.
Test everything out.
Yeah, as our testing goes. It's a DNA-based test. So we get to bring our lab up to the modern world. And it should increase our response time too.
That'd be great.
We need samples to go, and help validate it.
Or help validate, exactly.
I think one thing that Doug and I worked on a little bit this past week was that sample you picked up off the one farm where you had some rot issues, but it looked like it may have stemmed from some white grub injury initially. It might have been the entry point for that. And so a lot of times, these things kind of are hand in hand. And so when we have our soil-borne diseases or, they're intertwined with insects because they create an entryway, right, for those diseases to get in that system.
And that's the beauty of being here at the station. We all can work together and, run down hey, Kemper, guess what? Look at this, or Doug, oh my gosh, I think this might've started this way. So, that is the beauty of having our own little station here at Painter and being able to diagnose some of those issues. But I'm glad to hear about the improvements in lab technology. That'll be fun. And I know that, it's something that the farmers will love for sure.
It'll help us. The other tool that we have to bring on is to help us diagnose late blight, which is caused by Phytophthora infestans.
Yes.
So this came out of a scenario that caused me to lose sleep last year, in which we had Phytophthora-like symptoms on potato leaves. And once it's late blight, then that means I have to sound the alarm to everyone.
Yes.
We need to switch to the more expensive fungicides and keep on a tight schedule.
Yes.
But if you don't sound the alarm, then you're in trouble. But there's a potential for a false alarm. So there's another Phytophthora species, Phytophthora nicotiana, which can cause late blight-like symptoms.
Right.
And this one gets managed differently because it doesn't have as profuse of an airborne stage. So if you have a Phytophthora nicotiana outbreak, you can manage it on a field-by-field basis, and not everyone has to start spraying.
Very good.
So that's the other test that we've brought on. We've got, with the recent rains, we're kind of creeping up on our so we set out the stations at 4 locations along the shore, the weather stations.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw your alert today.
Yeah, I've been sending out. So if you're not on the email list, it's an email chain. You can contact someone on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get them hooked in. But it looks like you've covered. You've got a good list going. So
yeah, and
that's good.
We're getting close to that. So we call it an action threshold. So we use temperature and the number of hours at which the relative humidity is greater than 90% to calculate a prediction for when late blight is likely to occur.
Right.
It doesn't mean it will occur, right? But
be on
the
the lookout.
conditions are conducive to the disease. And so when we accumulate 18 DSVs, that's like our action threshold. Like I know my entomologist colleagues we don't have a lot of thresholds in disease, disease management, but this is one that we do, and it's worked very successfully in the northern states. So we're implementing it here. And it's been done before by my predecessor. And so 18 DSVs is our threshold. Once we hit that 18 DSVs.
Now tell them what DSVs are.
So disease severity value.
Very good.
Each disease severity value is according to this formula that you have to have a certain number of hours of relative humidity above 90%. And then you need less of those hours, the warmer the temperature is.
Yes.
And we're at 14 down the road.
As of last Friday.
In Lower Northampton.
Yeah, and at our Simpkin location, we're at 16. At Bird's Nest, we're at 17. Painter, we discovered that some type of insect had made a nest around our relative humidity sensor.
Wow.
And so, because it was putting all these wacky numbers in. So that one we're not counting this week because it's had a malfunction for 3 days. And then New Church is behind up the road at 8 DSVs. So
very good.
There's a range there. You can tell the ones up the road are about half the run down the road. And that could be, just back to how the rainfall patterns happen in pockets along the shore. So just use this as a guide. If you feel like you've been wetter, if you're up the road and you feel like you're on the bay side of 13, or you're on the seaside and you've been wetter than the bay side, then follow the locations that are further along.
Speaking to some of the growers, they've been putting some fungicides.
Yep, a lot of growers. And so my recommendation is to start with protectant fungicides. So chlorothalonil, macozeb based products. What we've seen from this program being implemented elsewhere is that we really don't need to switch to the more quote unquote heavy hitters until we get a disease outbreak in the region.
Right.
And that should be the switch over. But once we hit that 18 DSV, this is all based on allowing people to have their perception of risk. So like if you're, more risk averse and you want to, delay or start early, that's fine.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of as a guide.
Just another tool in the toolbox of being able to manage our crops and be the most productive we can be.
Yeah. So I think and the other thing is for those, it's not one size fits all because we have some people on a pretty intensive pink rot program.
Yes.
And so with that pink rot program, we have one in furrow spray and then followed by 2 foliar sprays. So you can use your pink rot foliar spray as a substitution for your late blight spray.
Yeah, right.
Those products cross over fairly well. But yeah, that's kind of all we've been seeing down across the board, down below on the other side of the border in North Carolina. There's been some reports of some southern blight. And so if people start seeing that, let me know because there's limited options there for a fungicide management piece, but we can help advise on that. And then the other last comment I'll make is for the early blight. traditionally I've sent out alert for early blight, which is called P days. And basically the deal with early blight is that the plants don't come susceptible to disease until they've started to put the tubers on. And the P day forecast is to predict when the plants will start to tuber initiation. With all the different varieties that we grow here, it's a little harder. So I think what I've been including is just a note based on what I'm told where plants are. So if your plants are flowering and they're starting to put on your tubers, you've entered into the stage of early blight susceptibility.
Correct.
And so the recommendation here would be to start with those protectant fungicides again, that Macozeb or chlorothalonil, and you can see some overlap with the early blight or the late blight program. And then if you start to see disease pop up on the shore somewhere, then we're going to start to switch over to the more systemic heavy hitter fungicides.
And most of your communication is going out via email.
Yes.
So to make sure that you're on the email list, and but you also send it to us. So if somebody's looking for it specifically, you can always call the extension offices and we can forward your email on because that's critical in these days and times, right?
Yep. I'm happy to add anyone to the list.
Exactly. Perfect.
So I know we need to move along, right? But I just want to just end it on a couple thoughts with potatoes and insects. I wanted to mention that one pest to be on the lookout for is potato leaf hopper.
Yes.
It's another one that migrates up from the south, so it's not here all the time. But Helen and I both found leaf hoppers, I think today or this past week.
I found adults in snap beans.
Yeah, and I found some adults in my potatoes today, and they will cause pretty substantial damage if they're hopper burn is the typical saying. So really, when it comes to these foliar pests, the best way to identify a problem is, if you have the time, go to your field and observe it, because you can have a small window to spray them before a problem exists. So if you have time, get in the field and scout as often as possible.
Yeah, this is definitely a keep scouting no matter what, but use the tools that we have here at the station
and going back to Colorado potato beetles, this is a time where you may see, the vat planting neonics have worn off, and you may see some potato beetles entering your fields. So start scouting, if they've laid eggs and there are larvae. Sometimes there is kind of an edge effect, so you can spray at the edge of your fields. But yeah, this is usually the time where you see them, and people are putting foliar sprays.
There's a lot going on right now, including some newer crops going in. I say new crops. We can grow anything here on the Eastern Shore, really, right? But, can we make it productive? So if anybody's out there listening and wants to get some specifics on how to grow, what to grow, when to grow, how to apply, you can always call the station and ask us. But I'm excited about the vegetable portion of coming back to the Eastern Shore. I grew up on vegetables and black plastic, so that's kind of like my wheelhouse. However, Accomack County does produce about 25% of Virginia's soybeans. So I think it's probably a good way to round out today by talking about what's going on soybean planting. And I know it's early, but the corn's popping up, the soybeans are going in. I mean, it's a busy time around here. What do y'all hear about, or what do you think might be something to look out for in the next couple weeks or months for soybeans?
Just a real quick comment from the disease side is I don't usually hear a lot from soybeans on disease issues this stage of game, but a lot of varieties can be prone to stand establishment issues that can be linked often to Pythium, but to other type of soil-borne pathogens. So if you are having stand issues, let us know. We can help figure that piece out.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, in terms of weed management, growers who are using integrated approach of cover crops and herbicides, that would definitely help in managing some of the troublesome weeds we have here in Eastern Shore, like horseweed, common ragweed. So cover crops residues, if you have in your field, that would definitely help. But along with the cover crops, if you are using cover crops, you still should not exclude pre-emergence herbicide as an option or as a practice. So we recommend you to still use pre-emergence herbicide along with the residue. The reason being is the residue would not be uniform or evenly spread across the field. So there would be a lot of gaps. So it's better to use a pre-emergence herbicide. We recently received one question on use of metribuzin in soybean. So even though it's recommended, the question was more about whether it can cause injury or not. We need to understand our situation here, that we are on sandy loam soils and we have low organic matter. And metribuzin actually highly depends on kind of the soil and also the organic matter if you have a low organic matter. And yes, it can cause injury, 10-15% of injury to your soybean, and people who are going towards edamame crop production, that's also a soybean, is just a vegetable soybean we call it. But yes, that could be highly injurious to those in those scenarios. There are some safer herbicides which growers can use, like for example, dual magnum.
Yes.
Then Reflex as a pre-emergence herbicide. Then Zidua, which is quite efficient, and I indicated that's one of the excellent herbicide which can be used. Then there are herbicides which are Authority, Elite, and Brodex. Authority, Elite, and Brodex are actually a premix of two combination, group 14 and 15. Then there is another herbicide, Tendovo, group 2, 5, and 15. Now, one thing needs to be considered and taken care of regarding Tendovo, that if you are using at a high rate, that still can cause some injury to your soybeans.
Right.
So we are evaluating those scenarios in our soils for Tendovo and what rates are safer to use. So, but for Authority, Elite, and Brodex, Reflex, Zidua, Dual Magnum, they are all safe herbicides. And if you are using with the cover crops, we normally see excellent control.
Excellent
with
control.
those herbicides. Yes.
That's important. Yes.
Well, I will say in comparison to last year in soybeans, so far we haven't had any reports of slug damage, but this is something to be on the lookout for. Camper would.
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of slug damage here on the station. We are working with the soil science department on a cover crop termination study, looking at things like nitrogen retention, different types of cover crops. One thing that Helen and I are looking at is the slugs, and we've had substantial slug pressure. If you follow the stock, you've seen me write up an article about that. And Joey, the postdoc for Mark Ryder, he just planted soybeans, maybe 2 weeks ago, and they just started coming up last Thursday or the Thursday before, I don't recall which, but we're seeing pretty substantial damage. And so
probably 80% to 90% damage to the cotyledons.
And again, this is a unique situation we're creating here on the station. We're trying to get the slug pressure right, but as far as reports go, it's not as bad as last year with slug damage, but it is something to be on the lookout for, especially when you start seeing spotty stand as the plants get bigger, because they're really vulnerable at that emergence stage.
That's right.
And when they eat that growing point in the first cotyledons, that's when you receive the biggest hit from the slugs.
So the pressure last year was high. So I'm glad that y'all are kind of ahead of the game. So if people are suspected, they can certainly drop by here, call Helen or Kemper and get some advice on what to do. But of course, soybeans, we're still early. We're ahead of the game.
I mean, the problem with the slugs, and this is something that we're doing, it's a multi-state initiative to look at how to tackle these slugs, is we still have a lot of chemical options, right? We have insecticides, right? And they kill insects. With slugs, they aren't insects. And so a lot of our traditional stuff isn't going to work on our slugs. And so we do have things like baits, granular baits that you can apply and stuff. But unfortunately, there's just really not a lot on the market that's at least registered for use in things even like our row crops, even thinking about our vegetables. And so that's something we're tackling. And with this experiment, we're looking at different cover crop termination timing just to see if that, can be a baseline to really mitigate the amount of slug pressure we're seeing.
Yeah. And everybody's, it's summertime or springtime. So everybody's summer help is coming in. We've got our crews full or trickling in. Yes.
And before we move on, we know that stink bugs are, important pest of soybeans, but Camper and I have caught some stink bugs so we have a black leg trap here at the station, and then there's a black leg trap down the road in Northampton County, and we're kind of monitoring the stink bug
population.
population flights, and we've actually caught some over the last few days.
I would say
Not like a large flight, but anywhere
they've started to pop off though,
20
right?
to 27 sting bugs over a couple, 3 nights.
Yeah, they're starting to pop off.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been monitoring well before now, and it's been like a slow trickle of one here, and all of a sudden, the past week, we've really seen an uptick. And it's not something to be super concerned about because stink bugs are fruit feeding, right?
Right.
But it just lets us know that they're here, and once you
Awareness.
start getting, ears of corn on tomatoes, whatever it might be, at least we'll be able to monitor,
correct,
and know that we have the population here, and we can start spraying for them when it's time. But certainly not something you need to spray for during your vegetative stages.
No. But it sounds like overall today, we're kind of ahead of the game, which is good, right? We're thinking about what problems could pop up. But if there are problems that we don't mention here on the podcast, you can always contact one of us, send us an email, contact Helen or I, and we can briefly talk about some of the issues you're seeing on the farm. Because that's the whole idea.
Questions. Make sure you contact us,
or you want
any topic that we could be discussing.
I know we definitely want this to be a place where exchange of information, and there are some things that we're not going to be able to go so far in depth on because it's our wheelhouse and we get excited about talking about our favorite things. But if there is something that you want us to speak on or find out, or you have a great research idea, send us an email, contact us, read the stalk, our newsletter that we all jointly put together with the station here, the Eastern Shore AREC and Virginia Cooperative Extension, both Accomack and Northampton offices. There's a lot going on, but there's a lot going on in the farmers' fields too, right? The tractors are moving and all the birds are flying and everybody's doing all their things. So,
and the fish are biting.
And the fish. Oh, camper. Love that. Well, okay. What do y'all think? Anybody have anything else before we want to go? Last minute things or fun little items that they want to talk about?
I think I just want to say that, as we start really getting into the full field season, if anybody has any issues, I'm happy to come out to the farm, talk with you about strategies or what's happening in the field. So just give me a holler. I'm around.
And we did learn earlier that text messages might be the best way. If you would prefer to text us, you can always send us a little message. We might not know who you are, but we'll figure it out. And, because in this day and time, it's all about trying to get the information out there fast. So let us know if there's, something that we could be doing to make it easier for the farmer, for you, the agriculturalist to grow your crops and be successful, because that's our main goal. But otherwise, this was a good kickoff to our first CabCast. I don't think we did that bad.
Sure.
Helen, Lord have mercy. What am I going to do with you? I don't even know. Well, I guess we'll sign off for today, and we'll be back next time.
Thank you.
Ta-da!